It's a pleasure for us to welcome Brad Senkiw of 105.5 The Roar in Clemson. You can follow Brad on Twitter at Brad Senkiw, Senkiw. Brad, thanks so much for your time. Hope you and your family are well these days. How are you?
I'm doing really well. The family is great and looking forward to the return of sports this week with golf. This is a great time.
You're darn right. We just had Jason Sobel on and trying to break him down for who to bet on. I mean, it's not just golf. It's, I think, gambling now as well, too, Brad. We got to find something. But things are not that, for maybe the only time in, the last 5 years, things are not completely rosy in Clemson. But inside of Clemson, I'm guessing it doesn't look anything like it looks from the outside. And mind you, it's not that bad from the outside.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where a couple of things piled upon the other, and it all started when Coach Dabo Swinney, who's, been there now 11 years, 12 years so now at Clemson, came out or didn't come out and have a statement right away when a lot of other coaches and a lot of sports figures and political figures and celebrities and all people around the country were coming out in support of, some of the movement here, what happened to George Floyd and stepping out and saying, hey, police brutality is wrong and justice is wrong. We didn't hear that from Coach Swinney for several days. In fact, it took probably about 4 or 5 days, maybe too long in a lot of people's eyes. And then when he did have his statement, a lot of people didn't like it. And Coach Swinney is a very important college football figure. So many people know now. I mean, the Clemson is on top of the world in terms of college football, and they won 2 out of the last 4 national championships, and so people look to him for as a voice to use his platform. And Coach Swinney hasn't used it the way that a lot of people liked, and he's very faith based. His initial statements did not really have a lot of talk about social injustice and police brutality and racism. It was a lot of what he relies on, which is faith, which is what he's always done. I mean, that's the thing. Coach Swinney is a very consistent person. And then the story came out of a former player, the use of the N-word by a coach, and that sort of built some more tension up. And then you went several more days without hearing anything out of Clemson, and it just kind of snowballed. And now they are doing a lot of damage control. And Coach Swinney finally really did address all of these things in a T-shirt he was wearing, and just had to kind of do a lot of damage control this week. And I think finally he's sort of gotten the message out they needed to get, but at the same time, these are things going on in our country that aren't going away, and these are things that we're having difficult conversations about it and uncomfortable conversations about it, trying to find real change. And I think people are looking to coaches, and maybe a little bit too much at times, but still, coaches in college football, they have a lot of influence on young men. They have a lot of influence on their fan bases, and people are asking for them to step up and do, really push for change. And it feels like it's taken maybe a little too long to get to this point for a guy like Coach Swinney, who is such a very popular and dominant figure in the sport.
Do you think that this is the first time that he maybe didn't look at himself as being as big a deal as he is? Because you're right. When there's a big issue, you go to the top 2 or 3 coaches in their respective sports. Now, people have been going to Nick for 10 years now. Well, now they're going to also go to Dabo. If Urban was still at Ohio State, they'd be going to Urban. And do you think this is the first time that Dabo, he tries to play the all shucks card, even though he cashes the big check, that he, forgot, hey, you're kind of a big deal. You have to step up here.
Maybe a little bit. I think some of it too is, look, Dabo Swinney's always been outspoken. I mean, he's always told you how he felt. He doesn't really hide behind certain things, but he's like everybody else. Sometimes you pick your battles. Sometimes you pick the topics that you think you can really make a difference in. And I think this is one of those things where I'm not sure he realized, to your point, how big his voice could be, something like this. And I think maybe this overwhelmed him a little bit to a certain degree. And I don't think he understood at that time. I think he does now, but I don't think he quite understood exactly what his voice could say and what it would carry. And so some of that is him trying to come to kind of a realization. And look, there's reason to give him credit too. This is a guy who went in front of the media a week ago. He didn't release a statement on Twitter. It wasn't with a nice big orange and purple background to stand out. No, he talked with media members and answered their questions. Now, people don't always like the answers you get, but that's how it is in real world anyway. But at the same time, give him credit for doing that, and then releasing that video instead of another statement, I think also shows that he's trying to get more in touch with what's going on. I think he has made some strides there.
He's Brad Senkiw, 105.5 The Roar in Clemson. Follow Brad on Twitter at Brad Senkiw, Senkiw.
Brad, and the other thing that has really come out of this is that all of a sudden DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson have started trying to get a change at Clemson and getting the Calhoun name off of the Honors College. It is on his land. He was also a slave owner and very adamant about pro-slavery. Do you think that is something that will have any legs? It's one thing to say from Houston. It's one thing to be national. But back in Clemson, how was this met?
Yeah, it's sort of mixed. I do think there are more people that are having the conversation now than ever before about changing some names. And there's some other names on that campus that need to be changed. Tillman Hall is a very prominent and dominant architectural building there on campus. Tillman was not a good person. You can go look him up, Ben Tillman. That needs to be changed. And I think in what's happened, though, is it's opened people's eyes to how it's affected others, how it's affected some of the black players and the athletes who've gone through Clemson, and they're speaking out about it now. And I think that's one of those things where people are going, okay, now I kind of get it. Now I see, why it would bother them to have to walk by that every single day. But the fact is, guys, there's a law in the state of South Carolina, the Heritage Act, that does not allow these public universities to change the names of buildings. And so the law has to be changed first. Has to go through, all the lawmakers in the state of South Carolina before Clemson can do anything. But it does feel like there's at least some more conversation and movement towards that happening at some point down the road.
The fact that it was Deshaun who put his name on this, I mean, I would think outside of Dabo, Deshaun Watson's probably the most popular person ever with Clemson football. I'm guessing because he put his name on this that it carries some weight.
No question. Deshaun Watson is a legend, and ever since the word in Clemson, I mean, he's only been gone, for 4 years, but he is clearly one of the most important sports figures that's ever come through that university. Deshaun, I've known Deshaun Watson a long time, and he's not someone who's overly boisterous about things. He doesn't take a stand on it. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't come out and talk about every little thing that goes out there. So when he talks about this, I think it got a lot of people's attention because he really is kind of the loved son of Clemson and always will be. And then a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, he grew up in Clemson. I mean, he went to high school there. He's from there. There's a lot of people in that community that are going to listen to what Hopkins has to say. So those two guys speaking out, I think, certainly have brought probably the right kind of attention to this.
When Louisville plays Clemson on September 12th and they're running down from the Rock, are there going to be fans there?
That's a great question. I think so. I think we're at least trending in that direction here in the state of South Carolina. I know down in Columbia at the University of South Carolina, they're in the SEC. They're kind of full steam ahead. But right now, Clemson has contingency plans in place. They've got a plan for everybody, 80,000 plus. They've got a plan for maybe 20,000 or 30,000. They've got a plan for nobody. So they're working through it, but they're also being, I think, smart about not talking about it too much and getting people riled up. Because I'm telling you, the first time you bring up attendance in the upstate of South Carolina when it comes to Clemson football, people go nuts. So I think they're wise to just continue to plan and wait. They don't have to make a decision, I don't think, until we get in maybe the middle of July or into August.
I think you're right there, Brad. Lastly, kids back. I mean, have they announced that students will be back on campus in the fall?
Well, yes. Students will be back. They were hoping to start bringing some students back this month. That's not going to happen. It doesn't sound like, but it does they're still trending toward having on-campus classes. They're going to change the schedule a little bit. They're going to send them home at Thanksgiving and not bring them back. That really should not affect athletics because like basketballs are hanging around on campus for so long during winter break anyway, during Christmas. So football will be a little bit different for them, but they're going to send kids home at Thanksgiving, and they're going to finish up the semester remotely.
Brad, thanks for making time for us. We really appreciate it. All the best to you and the family, and hopefully we can talk right around opening day.
Thank you, gentlemen. I hope so. Let's look forward to it.
Brad Senkiw, 105.5 The Roar in Clemson. Follow Brad on Twitter at Brad Senkiw, Senkiw. I will say this. I thought Dabo got a bad rap about the Football Matters shirt. There's a story behind that. The National Football Foundation, which, is involved in the College Football Hall of Fame, and they have a huge banquet every year. And a few years ago, their motto, the theme of the banquet was Football Matters. And so that stuff was given out that said Football Matters. And it was all about, the impact that football can have on your life and this, that, and the other thing. And that was their theme. All right. And so there are lots of people who were at the banquet. I mean, hundreds. They all have stuff that says Football Matters. All right. I thought he caught a bad break with that. Timing, obviously, you throw it on, you need to pay a little more attention as to what you put on at the time. But people took it as an offense on Black Lives Matter. And it was completely outside of that. It was in a different realm. That I thought was.
When did he have that shirt on? Doing what?
It was last week sometime, wasn't it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, but David, it's damn near as tone deaf as Drew Brees going back on and repeating the same thing from 4 years ago. I'm not giving him a pass. He is the most popular or one of the two most popular football coaches in the land. He has got to know. He has got to have a clue. Someone in front of him has got to be able to say, Dabo, not today. It's tone deaf.
It's not paying attention.
That's all.
All right. That I'll give you.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I've never once said that.
But it was not, the Sacramento Kings broadcaster lost his career over saying all lives matter because that is viewed as a slight against Black Lives Matter. There were folks who saw the shirt who thought that this was Dabo's way of also slighting Black Lives Matter. It is not in the realm of conversation. It was a completely different, it's football talking about football, if you know what I mean. Now, should he have worn the shirt last week? Probably not. Okay, but it had nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter movement. It was bad optics, but it had nothing to do with it.
And I can certainly understand how one would think that it did, given the timing.
No doubt. No doubt. And that's probably why he shouldn't have worn the shirt.
Correct. That's just ignorant.
Yeah, he made a mistake.
It's just ignorant.
It's bad timing.
Yep.
There's no doubt. But there was no malice behind the shirt. Okay? There was no malice behind the shirt. Come on now. I mean, if you know that where the shirts came from, 5 years ago the shirts came from. Okay?
Right, and he chose it to wear it in the midst of a national protest outrage with Black Lives Matter being at the center of it. I don't know how else you take it.
I don't think he paid a whole lot of attention and he just threw the shirt on. Now, you can criticize him for that, but I don't think you can then draw a conclusion about his views on what's going on in our country. I think that's which people did. I think that was a reach. I thought that was unfair to him. For as much of a mistake as you may think he made, I think to take it any further was unfair to him. And I'm not a Dabo apologist.
No, you're not, and I'm not an apologist really for anyone. I have trouble sympathizing or giving a pass for people who just are tone deaf to the times.
Okay.
When you're in a position of power like he is, You should just know better. That's all.
Okay, but tone deaf is different than malice. I mean, it is. All right.
It is.
And there's a big difference. And people vault right over those tracks and go from one to the other. That's all. You want to take shots at him about any – listen, you want to say his press conference, he didn't go far enough? I agree. I mean, it couldn't be any more milquetoast than that first press conference. It was surprising, actually. It was so vanilla. But I just think that the conclusion, and then a couple days later, the shirt, and so people took one and linked it with the other and took a leap, and I just thought that the leap was a little too far. That's all.